Hello, and welcome to our discussion of logistics. This will be the third topic that we're going to talk about with respect to the place component of the marketing mix. And my challenge with this lecture is that, or this video, is that logistics is a course that I've taught for a long time, over 35 years basically. And I have to attempt to take a course that I've taught for a whole bunch of years and try to cram it into a 20-minute video. And it's always a challenge. It's a challenge in the classroom because, take a course that I teach or I've taught for a long time and try to cram it into, a class period is a challenge, and it's even more of a challenge to cram it into 20 minutes. So, in order to cram it into 20 minutes, we're going to limit ourselves to three topics. First, I'm going to define what is meant by logistics. Then I'm going to talk about how bad logistics can screw up good marketing. That's one of my favorite phrases, and it's actually been quoted in some logistics trade publications through the years. And then the third thing that we will talk about in this discussion is exactly how does logistics fit into marketing, and why I spend a lot of time on logistics potentially where others who teach this course don't spend anywhere near as much time. So we'll start out with defining what logistics is, and I'm going to read a definition, and I'm going to put in a shameless plug, because what you might be able to see here is you might be able to see a book called Contemporary Logistics. There we go, and look, if you see it goes Paul R. Murphy Jr., that would be me, and then A. Michael Kniemeyer, that would not be me. But Mike was actually a marketing logistics major here at John Carroll, and he's now a logistics professor down at the Fisher College, down at The Ohio State University. So he came on as my co-author of this book. So I know a little bit. I think I know a little bit about logistics since he said, hey, the guy literally wrote the book, and if you buy a copy of it and bring it by my office, I'll sign it for you free of charge. So, and this is the 12th edition that just came out. Again, shameless plug, just came out in April of this year. So the book contains a definition, and the definition is from an organization known as the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals, or CSCMP, and defines logistics as that part of supply chain management that plans, implements, and controls the efficient, effective forward and reverse flow and storage of goods, services, and related information between the point of origin and the point of consumption in order to meet customer requirements. Say, whoa, can you go back over that? Absolutely, because there's a lot going on in that definition. So logistics is that part of supply chain management that plans, implements, and controls the efficient, effective forward and reverse flow and storage of goods, services, and related information between the point of origin and point of consumption in order to meet customer requirements. And that definition has changed dramatically since when I took my first logistics course. In fact, I didn't even call it logistics back when I took my first course. It was called physical distribution management back in the late 70s, early 80s. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in that definition. One of the key things is that it ends with focusing on customer requirements. Right? That is, only within the last 20 years is the definition of logistics included that. So, basically we're saying what we're starting with is, what does the customer want? What does the customer need? And how can we do that from a logistical perspective? It talks about efficient and effective, right? Those are concepts that we have talked about before. Basically, effective is the idea that, can I keep my promises? And from a marketing perspective, promises are really important. Efficient refers to the use of company resources in attempting to keep a promise. Right, and basically sometimes we're talking about inefficiency because in a number of organizations, since they don't know a lot about logistics necessarily, organizations make a lot of suboptimal decisions with respect to logistics, and those decisions can be very costly. And in fact, the decisions can not only be costly, but sometimes they don't even help an organization keep its promises. So you got the worst of both worlds there. You've got an inability to keep promises, which is important for customer satisfaction, and then you also have the fact that you're spending company resources, non-judiciously to do that. It also talks about forward and reverse flows of stuff, right? If you think of forward going, that means the stuff is going from the manufacturer to the consumer. The reverse is that it goes from the consumer back towards the manufacturer. That's played the reverse flow has played a more prominent role with online purchasing, because the return rates for online purchases are much higher than they are for other kinds of retail purchases, such as when you go to a bricks and mortar store. It talks about goods, services, and related information, and today logistics is as much about the information as it is the movement of the product itself, or the storage of the product itself. And so there's now an ability for organizations to substitute information for inventory. So an example I like to use is like you go into a McDonald's and you order something, there's a cash register there, but the cash register is also acting as an inventory monitoring system, right? So if you order, let's say you order a cheeseburger, it's recording that you've ordered a cheeseburger, so, you now know that you're going to need buns, and you're going to need a burger, and you're going to need cheese, and you're going to need whatever else. And so organizations can get a much better handle on what it is that's actually selling and what isn't selling. And again, in today's world, information tends to be a lot cheaper than inventory. So the information that's associated with logistics is extremely important as well. So with defined logistics, there's a lot going on there. That's why people need to. That's why people. Shameless plug number 2. That's why people need to write contemporary logistics textbooks, because there's a lot of nuances, and organizations have made, incredible mistakes. I have a lot of anecdotes that I tell in class, both from my experiences, my personal experiences, as well as from stuff that I know through things that I've read and people that I've talked to and things of that nature. So define logistics, and now we have to spend a little bit of time focusing on how bad logistics can screw up good marketing. And you say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, what I talk about is that, you can have a really good product, you can have wonderful promotional activities, you can have a really good price, and if the logistics are all messed up, you got nothing. So, for example, what about if a shipment gets lost? What about if it's damaged? What about if it arrives late? Right. So all those kinds of things, right, can impact a customer's satisfaction, right, with his or her order, right? So again, the bad logistics can screw up good marketing. And I have an example, and it's a relatively dated example now, but I like to use it because it kind of illustrates what can happen if an organization just totally ignores and or underestimates logistics. And back when kind of e-commerce was taken off, back in the late 90s, there was a company called eToys, and eToys set itself up as an online retailer of, hey, what a surprise, toys. And what eToys was really good at doing was eToys was really good at getting orders. It had, probably some of the best for the time. Now, you got to remember, this is the late 90s, early 2000s. It had some of the best at the time, order management systems associated with e-commerce. What eToys was really bad at was filling the orders. And part of the reason that that's important is that, if you think about probably the highest demand time for toys is the Christmas holidays, right? Christmas, Hanukkah, that time period. And it becomes really important, right? If you think about it from a marketing perspective, it's really important for if you're ordering something online and you want it delivered for Hanukkah or Christmas, it's really important that order show up on time, right? Try explaining to a 4-year-old why Santa Claus didn't get them, the toy that they wanted. Well, Billy, there's this thing called logistics. And what happened is that the company got our order, but the company didn't know anything about logistics. And as a result, the company shipped the order late, and there was all this volume, and FedEx or UPS was prioritizing the order, and your order wasn't that much, and so it got delayed to being delivered 3 days after Christmas. That doesn't cut it. And so what eToys ended up having to do in order to keep its promises is it ended up having to expedite, basically speed up the transportation of a lot of its shipments around the holidays. The problem with that, or one of the problems with that, was that it had to absorb, it being eToys, it had to absorb the additional transportation costs. It couldn't go back to the customer and say, hey, wait a minute, I'm having to put this thing on an airplane, and air transportation is much more expensive than highway transportation or railroads or those kinds of transportation. And eToys wasn't able to increase the price. So let's say, you paid $50 for the toy. In some cases, eToys ended up, the transportation costs for the toys ended up being more than $50. So they ended up losing money on a whole bunch of shipments. And if you learn nothing else from this class, and you may learn nothing else from this class, and it really has nothing to do with logistics, is that if you sell every product that you make at a loss, you're not going to be in business very long. And so eToys, one of eToys' challenges was that it was headquartered out in California, and it was supplying things. It was sending orders out of one warehouse, and one of the challenges with that was the warehouse was in California, and 70% of eToys' customers were east of the Mississippi River. Right, and so the transportation costs were really high to start with because the further the distance the products are being transported, the more the cost is. But when the company had to expedite, it was dealing with even longer. Right, LA to let's say Baltimore is 2,500 miles. That gets really expensive. So it's an illustration, again, of bad logistics screwing up good marketing. And there's a lot of other examples of bad logistics screwing up good marketing that I could offer. And so we've talked about, or we've defined logistics, and we've briefly explored the definition. We spent a little bit of time talking about how bad logistics can screw up good marketing. And then the final thing that we want to talk about is how does logistics fit into marketing? Well, one of the ways is if you look at the definition of logistics again, it has the concluding words involve customer requirements. So there's a customer focus, and like I said, back when I first took my distribution course back in the late 70s, that word customer did not enter into the equation. Okay, so there's at least an acknowledgement of the customer. Secondly, is the concept of customer satisfaction, right? The actual, and we'll define satisfaction as the actual performance meets or exceeds the expected performance. And so one of the things that and I've worked with some companies through the years, and a couple of companies that I've worked with have said, well, we're doing, our performance, our on-time delivery performance, let's say, is the same as it was, 10 years ago. Well, the problem with the on-time delivery performance being the same as it was 10 years ago is that the customer expectation is now different than it was 10 years ago. So if you were, let's say you were running at like 95% on-time delivery. Well, if customers were demanding 94% on-time delivery, and the fact that you were running at 95% means you were slightly exceeding what the customer wants. But if you're meeting 95% on-time delivery today, and the customer wants 98%, you're slightly below what the customer expectations are. And as we've seen, and as you guys can recognize, as we go through time, right, customer expectations continue to increase. I mean, if you'd have told me when I was your age, if you'd have told me that people would be demanding 1 hour delivery of orders that they were placing, electronically, I would have looked at you like you were crazy. Right? And even if you go back 20 years ago to tell somebody that, there's going to be a period in time 20 years down the road where people are going to want 1 hour delivery of products that they order, you'd have been laughed at. But that's the reality in some cases now. And so the fact that customer satisfaction refers that, looks at the actual performance meeting or exceeding the expected performance, and you can start to see, how logistics can play in. Part of it is delivery time. A second is the condition of the product. A third is, did I get what I wanted? Right? Did I get the right product? Did I get the right quantity of the product? So there's all these things, right, that can go wrong from a logistics perspective that can have a big impact on customer satisfaction. And customer satisfaction is important from a marketing perspective because customer satisfaction is a prerequisite for customer loyalty, and studies have shown that loyal customers not only tend to buy more over time, but they tend to be more profitable over time as well. A third reason for, you said, hey, iced tea, Doc. Thank you, iced tea. A third reason for how logistics, or a third example of how logistics fits into marketing, is that logistics can offer a competitive advantage. And 20 years ago, I used to talk about how Walmart logistics provided a competitive advantage, and how Walmart was pretty much cleaning everybody's clock because of the combination of its really good information systems and its really good logistics systems. Well, we fast forward 20 years, and if you think about some of the examples that we've used in this course to date, as well as your first short written assignment, today's Walmart is Amazon. And Amazon, by far, is an incredibly efficient and effective logistics organization. In fact, the logistics trade publications have run several articles over the past few years saying, is Walmart even a retailer? Isn't Walmart a logistics company that happens to, kind of specialize in retailing? And what you can see is, if you think about the first video that we looked at, Amazon was, Amazon's providing fulfillment for other companies because Amazon is so good at fulfillment that other companies choose to have Amazon fill the orders that are coming into the other companies. And where this gets, and that provides a tremendous competitive advantage to Amazon, because just like everybody's trying to, was trying to catch up with Walmart 20 years ago, everybody, including Walmart, right, is trying to, catch up with or be competitive with Amazon in today's world. To give you an example, and I know at least a couple of you use Jet.com as your online store for the longer written assignment. Now, Walmart bought Jet.com, I think last year, 2016, or early in 2017, in part to be able to kind of compete with Amazon in the e-commerce marketplace. So, and another thing about logistics and competitive advantage is the competitive advantage that you can achieve from logistics is really hard to copy in the short term, and it takes much longer because it's just not real easy to change warehousing locations, change ordering patterns, switch transportation, and things of that nature. All right, and then a fourth way that logistics fits into marketing is through cost. And as I've mentioned a couple of times in this video, there's a lot of costs that are associated with logistics, and because organizations aren't necessarily as savvy in logistics as they could be, organizations can increase their logistics costs without really improving customer service or customer satisfaction. And those costs are important because what happens is if you have additional logistics costs, and you say, well, what do you mean by additional logistics costs? Well, let's just look at something like inventory, and let's say that we decide to hold a whole bunch of inventory of a particular product because we don't want to be out of stock. And, out of stock has its issues. But, I think back to a consulting job that I did for a branch of one of the branch offices or satellite offices of the Cleveland Clinic, and they had 250 boxes of a particular product, and I asked the people, how much of that product was demanded every year. And they said, well, we sell about 5 boxes of it. And I looked at them, I said, you got 250 boxes in stock, you sell 5 a year. I said, you got 50 years worth of supply. Why do you have 50 years worth of supply of this stuff? And the point is that, what that does is it increases, by having 50 years of supply, that increases your inventory holding cost, and you have to have some place to put the stuff, so your storage costs are increasing as well. So when we talk about the fact that logistics, can increase cost, and then those costs are factored into the prices that organizations play, you can get a sense for logistics contributing to marketing through, a better focus on cost from both an effectiveness and an efficiency perspective. Well, I was not successful. I'm now at 22 and a half minutes basically, but hey, not bad for condensing an entire course into less than 25 minutes. I'm looking on the positive side. See you down the road. Bye.